still remember how the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead in that cold conference room. My hands were steady on the table, but my heart pounded in my chest as I faced Troy Benson, CEO of Stratus X Robotics. After 11 loyal years, this was how it would end. "Ivy, we're restructuring the engineering department," Troy said without even looking me in the eye. His son-in-law, Marcus, sat beside him with a smirk on his face. "Your position has been deemed non-essential." Non-essential? I had built the core technology that powered every robot we sold. My neural sync system was the reason Stratus X was worth millions. The room fell silent as everyone waited for me to break down or argue. Instead, I simply gathered my notebook, stood up, and nodded. "I understand. I'll clear out my desk today." Troy looked almost disappointed by my calm response. He'd expected drama, tears, begging, but I wouldn't give him that satisfaction. As security escorted me out, I passed my team members. Their faces showed shock and sympathy, but no one spoke up. Not even Lena, who I'd mentored for years. In the parking lot, I sat in my car and took one deep breath. They had no idea what they'd just thrown away. At home, I poured myself a glass of wine and pulled out a folder from my fireproof safe. Inside was my original employment contract with Stratus X. I flipped to page 17, section 4.3, and ran my finger along the words I knew by heart. "All intellectual property created by employee shall remain company property, except any specifically registered patents under employee name, which shall be licensed to company for durations specified in separate agreements." I smiled, remembering how the old CEO Richard had insisted I add this clause years ago. "Always protect yourself, Ivy," he'd said. "You never know when leadership might change." How right he'd been. I pulled out another document, the licensing agreement for NeuralSync, the brain control module I'd developed and patented in my own name. Stratus X had been using it with my permission all these years. The license would expire in exactly 6 days. Without it, every robot they manufactured would be illegal. Every line of code they used would be unauthorized. Their entire operation would grind to a halt unless they renewed with me, the person they just fired. I finished my wine and opened my laptop. It was time to prepare for what would happen when they discovered they were running on borrowed time. 5 years ago, Stratus X had been on the verge of bankruptcy. Our military contract had fallen through and investors were pulling out fast. That's when I locked myself in the lab for 3 straight weeks. I still remember the empty coffee cups piling up, the takeout containers, the cot I'd set up in the corner. Day and night blurred together as I coded what would become NeuralSync, an artificial intelligence system that could control robotic movements with unprecedented precision. When I finally emerged, bleary-eyed but triumphant, I demonstrated the system to Richard. The robot arm moved with such fluid grace that it could pick up an egg without cracking it. "This will save us," Richard had whispered. He was right. Within months, orders flooded in. Military, medical, industrial clients. Everyone wanted our robots with their new human-like movements. Richard had insisted I patent it personally. "The company's unstable right now," he'd said. "If we go under, at least you'll keep ownership of your creation." So I did. I filed the patent under my name and licensed it to Stratus X. Then Richard retired. Troy took over, and everything changed. Troy hired his family members, cut research budgets, and treated the engineering team like replaceable parts. And now he'd replaced me without understanding what he was losing. 3 days after my termination, Lena texted me, "They hired your replacement. Some guy named Caleb. Says he's an AI visionary." I searched him online. Caleb Porter, 28, with slicked-back hair and designer glasses. His resume listed AI consultant for several failed startups. No robotics experience, no engineering degree, just a lot of buzzwords and a connection to Marcus. Later that day, another text from Lena, "Emergency all-hands meeting. Caleb's telling everyone NeuralSync is outdated and needs to be completely rewritten. Troy loves him." I felt a cold chill. They couldn't rewrite NeuralSync, not legally anyway. Any modification would violate my patent rights once the license expired. I called my lawyer friend, Sarah, and explained the situation. "So they fired you, and now they're planning to modify the technology you personally own?" she asked, incredulous. "Exactly. Do they understand the licensing agreement?" "Clearly not." I forwarded her the documents, and she called back an hour later. "This is airtight, Ivy. If they modify your system after the license expires, you could shut them down completely. Have you warned them? Not yet, I replied, but I will. The next morning, I drafted a formal notice with Sarah's help. It was simple, professional, and very clear. NeuralSync's license would expire on Sunday at midnight. Any use after that date would require renewal. Any modifications would constitute infringement. I sent it directly to StratusX's legal department via certified mail. Then I waited. By afternoon, my phone buzzed with a message from Raj in legal. We'd always been friendly. Ivy, Troy saw your letter, called it sour grapes and threw it in the trash. You need to know he's not taking this seriously. My heart sank. Not for me, but for what this meant for the company. For my former teammates, for the projects we'd built together. Thanks for telling me, Raj. Just make sure there's a record that I sent the warning. Already done, he replied. And Ivy? A lot of us miss you around here. I appreciated his kindness, but sentiment wouldn't solve this problem. Troy needed to understand the reality of the situation before it was too late. I opened my laptop and began documenting everything. Every email, every development log, every proof that NeuralSync was mine. If Troy wanted to play hardball, I needed to be prepared. Years of meticulous record-keeping were about to pay off. I logged into my personal cloud storage, where I'd kept backup copies of everything. Commit histories, showing who wrote each line of code, test logs with timestamps, design documents, and emails discussing NeuralSync's development. Most importantly, I had the original patent filing registered in my name and only licensed to StratusX. As I sorted through the files, something caught my eye. A notification from an automated system I'd set up long ago to track any changes to NeuralSync's core code. Someone at StratusX had already begun modifying the system. I checked the timestamp. Yesterday, 2 days after my termination and 4 days before the license expired. They weren't even waiting. I downloaded the logs showing the unauthorized changes, noting how they'd tried to bypass my security protocols. This wasn't just bad management. This was active intellectual property theft. I called Sarah again. They've already started changing it, I told her. That's violation number 1, she said grimly. Document everything. We're building a case they can't ignore. I worked through the night, organizing evidence and preparing for what would come next. I wasn't out for revenge. I just wanted recognition for my work and fair compensation for my creation. But Troy's arrogance was making this impossible to resolve peacefully. Late Friday afternoon, my phone rang with an unknown number. I answered cautiously. Ivy, it's Lena. I'm calling from a burner phone. Her voice was shaky. Things are falling apart here. What happened? Caleb convinced Troy to let him upgrade the NeuralSync modules. He deleted 3 key components, claiming they were redundant. Then he integrated his own half-baked code. She paused. The test unit crashed during the SurgeMed demo today. The robot arm went haywire and smashed their prototype medical device. My stomach dropped. SurgeMed was our biggest potential client, worth millions in contracts. Their CEO was furious, Lena continued. They're threatening to sue for damages and lost time. How did Troy respond? He told everyone to blame the old, unstable system you built. He's making you the scapegoat, Ivy. I felt anger boiling up but kept my voice steady. Do you have documentation of the changes Caleb made? Yes, I'll send them securely. Be careful, Lena. Don't risk your job. Too late, she said bitterly. I already resigned. I can't be part of this train wreck. After hanging up, I realized this was no longer just about me. Jobs were at stake. The company I'd helped build was in danger. Saturday morning, I met with Professor Chen, my old mentor from MIT, who is now a partner at Blackwell IP Law. I brought all my documentation, including Lena's evidence of the unauthorized modifications. They fired you, ignored your warning about the license expiring, modified your patented technology without permission, and now they're blaming you for their failures? Professor Chen shook his head in disbelief. That sums it up, I said. He reviewed my documents carefully, then looked up with determination in his eyes. Ivy, this is one of the clearest IP infringement cases I've ever seen. Blackwell will represent you pro bono. Really? Why? Because what they're doing is wrong, and because you're the kind of innovator this industry needs. Also, he smiled, it'll make a fantastic case study for my students. By the end of our meeting, we had drafted a comprehensive cease and desist letter with a clear deadline: renew the proper license by Sunday midnight or face an immediate injunction Monday morning. Professor Chen's assistant delivered the letter to Troy's home address that afternoon. The countdown had begun. 36 hours until the license expired. 3 days until the whole company would feel the consequences. Monday morning, while I sat with Professor Chen preparing our court filing, Lena texted me updates from Stratus X. Emergency leadership meeting happening now. Troy's furious about the legal letter. 20 minutes later, Troy told everyone you're bitter and to ignore the empty threats, said the legal team will handle it. Then the most revealing message. Legal VP just spoke up. Said your claim is valid and that NeuralSync powers 87% of our active systems. Room went dead silent. I could picture it perfectly. Troy's confident smile fading as reality sank in, the executives exchanging worried glances, someone finally asking the question, what happens if she pulls the license? Professor Chen and I finalized the court papers, ready to file first thing Tuesday if needed. We weren't bluffing. Late that afternoon, Raj from legal called me directly. Ivy, it's chaos here. Legal confirmed you own the patent outright. Troy's trying to find loopholes, but there aren't any. We've advised him to negotiate with you immediately. And? There was a long pause. He said he'd rather take his chances in court than give in to extortion. I closed my eyes briefly. His choice. But the license expires at midnight. After that, every Stratus X robot operating with NeuralSync becomes an infringement. I know, Raj said quietly. We all know. At 12:01 a.m. Tuesday, my license to Stratus X officially expired. I couldn't sleep, knowing what would happen next. By 8:30 a.m., my phone was blowing up with messages. The system shutdown I'd programmed years ago as a security measure had activated automatically. Without a valid license, NeuralSync had reverted to its base state, functional but limited. Lena, all our dashboards are showing critical errors. Production line robots have stopped responding to advanced commands. Clients are calling. Customer service is overwhelmed. Troy's locked himself in his office. At 9:17, my phone rang. It was Troy himself. I let it go to voicemail. Ivy, this is Troy. Whatever point you're trying to make, you've made it. Call me back immediately so we can resolve this situation. Please. His voice had lost its usual arrogance. Now he sounded desperate. I listened to the message twice, then forwarded it to Professor Chen with a simple note. It's working. We had discussed this moment extensively. The key was not to respond immediately. Let them feel the full impact of their decisions. Let Troy understand exactly what he had thrown away when he fired me. By noon, Stratus X's stock had dropped 8%. 3 more clients had threatened to cancel contracts, and Caleb, my so-called replacement, had apparently disappeared completely. At 2 p.m., I finally called Troy back. Ivy? Thank God. Troy's relief was palpable through the phone. We need to fix this immediately. Tell me what you need to turn the systems back on. I'm not turning anything off, Troy. The license expired. The system is just enforcing its legal status. Fine, whatever. Let's renew the license then. Same terms as before? I almost laughed at his assumption that I'd simply return to the status quo. No, Troy, new terms. I'll email them to you now. I sent the document Professor Chen and I had prepared. $1.5 million annual licensing fee, renewable quarterly at my discretion. Full patent attribution in all Stratus X materials. A dedicated team to maintain NeuralSync, reporting directly to me as an external consultant. And most importantly, explicit language preventing unauthorized modifications. The phone went silent as he read. This is extortion, he finally sputtered. This is business, I corrected him. You fired me, ignored my warnings, modified my property without permission, and blamed me for your failures. These terms reflect the new reality of our relationship. The board will never approve this. Then I suggest you call an emergency board meeting. Your production lines are still down, correct? Another long silence. I'll call you back, he said coldly, and hung up. I knew exactly where he was going next, to the legal department, hoping to find a way around my patent. Good luck with that. Troy requested a meeting the next morning at Blackwell Law. I arrived with Professor Chen, feeling strangely calm despite the stakes. Troy brought Marcus and the Stratus X legal VP, Sandra. His usual swagger had dimmed, replaced by barely controlled anger. Let's cut to the chase, Troy began, forcing a smile. "We've reviewed your proposal and have a counteroffer." He slid a document across the table. "We'll pay a one-time fee of $250,000 for full ownership of the neural sync patent." Professor Chen didn't even touch the paper. "That's not remotely close to market value, and you know it." Troy leaned forward. "Ivy, be reasonable. You developed neural sync while working for Stratus X. We both know this patent situation is just a technicality. A legal technicality," I clarified. "And no, I developed the core technology on my own time, using my own equipment when the company was failing. That's why Richard insisted I patent it personally." Troy's face reddened. Richard was sentimental and didn't understand business. I pulled out my phone and played a voicemail from last week that Lena had forwarded me. Troy's voice saying, "We don't need Ivy anymore. She's just expensive baggage from the old days." Does this sound sentimental, Troy? Or does it sound like someone who doesn't understand what he's throwing away? For once, he had no comeback. By Wednesday afternoon, Stratus X was in full crisis mode. Production had been halted for over 24 hours. Support calls were flooding in from clients worldwide. The stock had dropped another 12%. According to Raj, Troy refused to meet my terms. Instead, he'd ordered the engineering team to restore operations using system backups from before my departure. I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. You see, I had anticipated this move years ago. NeuralSync's architecture included a rolling authentication system that verified the license status every 12 hours. Even old backups would check for current authorization after rebooting. At 4:30 p.m., Lena texted, "They're trying to restore from backups. Nothing's working. System keeps returning to limited functionality." Caleb's blaming the network, the servers, even the building's electrical system. Everyone knows he's clueless. At 5:15, Troy's screaming at the engineers. Two just walked out. At 5:45, breaking, investors have been notified of a temporary production delay due to system upgrades. Stock dropped another 5% in after-hours trading. I wondered how long Troy could keep up the charade before admitting the truth. Stratus X couldn't function without my technology, and they couldn't use my technology without my permission. The answer came sooner than expected. At 6:30, I received an email from someone unexpected. Janet Miles, head of the Stratus X board. Janet's email was brief. "Miss Monroe, the board has called an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning regarding the current operational issues. Please call me at your earliest convenience." I called immediately. Janet answered on the first ring. "Miss Monroe, thank you for responding so quickly. The board has just been informed of a system failure affecting all production. Troy claims you've deliberately sabotaged the company. Is this accurate?" "Absolutely not," I replied calmly. "I simply declined to renew a licensing agreement after being terminated. The systems are functioning as legally designed." "I see." Her tone was measured. "Troy didn't mention any licensing issue." "I'm not surprised. He's been ignoring my notices for days." There was a pause. "I've been reviewing your termination paperwork. Troy listed your position as redundant to current operations. Yet now he claims our entire production depends on your system. That contradiction has not escaped my notice." Janet sighed. "Would you be willing to present your side to the full board tomorrow? 9 a.m.? I'll be there with my legal counsel." After hanging up, I received another text from Lena. "Troy just told everyone you hacked the system. Nobody believes him, especially after those 3 engineers quit. Board members have been calling department heads directly, asking questions." I forwarded the update to Professor Chen, adding, "They're looking for someone to blame. Troy's chosen me." His response was immediate. "Bring everything tomorrow. Every document, every email. It's time for the board to learn the truth." The board meeting was held via Zoom due to the short notice. I sat in Professor Chen's office, dressed professionally, with all my documentation organized and ready. Troy looked haggard on screen, with dark circles under his eyes. He began with a rehearsed speech about disgruntled former employees and corporate sabotage. But Janet cut him off. "We've heard your version, Troy. We'd like to hear from Ms. Monroe now." I shared my screen and methodically presented the facts. The original patent filing, Richard's emails instructing me to protect my innovation, the licensing agreement, my termination notice, and my multiple warnings about the expiring license. I didn't sabotage anything, I concluded. The system is simply enforcing the legal boundaries that existed all along. Boundaries that Troy chose to ignore. One board member, Dr. Allen, spoke up. I worked with Ivy at MIT before she joined Stratus X. She's one of the most ethical engineers I know. If she says this is her technology, I believe her. Janet nodded. The documentation seems clear. Troy, why weren't we informed about this critical licensing issue? Troy stammered about handling it internally and not troubling the board with operational details. Dr. Allen wasn't having it. A $150 million patent that controls our entire production line isn't an operational detail. It's the company's primary asset. Janet thanked me and asked me to disconnect while they continued their discussion. Before I left, she added, "We'll be in touch very soon, Ms. Monroe, directly." As the call ended, Professor Chen smiled. That went better than expected. I spent the afternoon anxiously waiting for news. Around 4 p.m., Raj called. "Ivy, I thought you should know. The board just held a vote. Troy has been placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation." My breath caught. Who's in charge now? Janet Miles has stepped in as interim CEO. She's called an all-hands meeting for tomorrow morning. I felt a complex mix of emotions. Vindication, yes, but also concern for the company I'd helped build and the people who still work there. "There's more," Raj continued. "Sandra told me they're conducting a full review of recent terminations and hirings. Caleb and Marcus have both been suspended." After hanging up, I sat quietly, processing what this meant. I hadn't started this to get Troy fired. I'd simply wanted fair recognition for my work and compensation for my creation. At 6:30 p.m., an email arrived from Janet. "Miss Monroe, thank you for your candor today. The board would like to discuss a potential strategic partnership with you regarding NeuralSync. Are you available to meet tomorrow afternoon?" I forwarded it to Professor Chen with the question, "What do you think they're offering?" His reply came quickly. "Something better than what you asked for. Remember, you hold all the cards now." I typed my response to Janet. "I'll be there." Walking into Stratus X headquarters the next day felt surreal. Security greeted me respectfully and handed me a visitor badge. As I crossed the lobby, employees stopped and stared. Some nodded, a few even smiled. Janet met me at the elevator. "Thank you for coming, Miss Monroe, or may I call you Ivy?" "Ivy is fine." She led me to the executive conference room, the same one where Troy had fired me less than 2 weeks ago. How quickly things had changed. Inside waited 3 board members and Sandra from legal. Janet gestured for me to sit. "Ivy, we've reviewed the situation thoroughly. What happened to you was unacceptable. The board had no knowledge of the critical role your technology played or the licensing arrangement." Dr. Allen added, "We believe Stratus X needs you, not just your technology, but your vision." Janet slid a document across the table. "This is our proposal. We'd like you to return as Chief Technology Officer, with full patent attribution and a significant equity stake. Your first priority would be rewriting our systems governance to protect our engineers and their innovations." I reviewed the offer carefully. The compensation was generous, much more than I'd asked for in my licensing terms. "I have conditions," I said. "I need autonomy to rebuild the engineering culture, and I want to review all recent terminations." Janet nodded. "Agreed. When can you start?" I thought of my 11 years at Stratus X, the technology I'd created, the teams I'd built. "Monday," I said. "I'll start Monday." My first week as CTO was exhausting but exhilarating. I focused on 3 priorities: restoring NeuralSync to full functionality, rebuilding the engineering team, and repairing client relationships damaged during the crisis. I rehired Lena as engineering director and brought back the 3 engineers who had quit. I also reached out to other talented people who had left during Troy's tenure. By Wednesday, we'd restored all production systems. By Friday, most client concerns had been addressed. The stock price began to recover. During a code review, Lena discovered something disturbing. "Ivy, look at these commits from Caleb. He wasn't just modifying NeuralSync, he was copying parts of it to an external repository." We traced the repository to a startup called Neuralink, a direct competitor that had mysteriously received funding right after I was fired. "He was stealing your code for another company," Lena said. "And look who's listed as their technical advisor." The website showed a familiar face. Marcus, Troy's son-in-law. I immediately notified Janet and our legal team. This wasn't just about my patent anymore. This was corporate espionage. Sandra drafted a cease and desist to Neuralink and began preparing a lawsuit. With this evidence, she said, we can go after both Neuralink and Troy personally. I nodded grimly. Do it. No one steals from Stratus X, not even its former CEO. 3 weeks into my new role, I received a handwritten letter that moved me to tears. Dear Miss Monroe, you don't know me, but I was an intern in the engineering department when you were fired. I watched everything that happened next. How you stood up for yourself and your work, how you didn't back down even when Troy tried to blame you. Seeing how you handled yourself showed me that I don't have to accept mistreatment to succeed in this industry. I've since been hired full-time, and I've been selected to lead the new internal audit program that tracks how engineering contributions are credited. Thank you for being the role model I needed. Sincerely, Jamie Chen. I invited Jamie to lunch the next day. The young engineer was nervous but earnest as we talked about creating fair systems for recognizing innovations. The audit program was Janet's idea, Jamie explained. We're reviewing all patents and major projects to ensure proper attribution. What have you found so far? I asked. Jamie hesitated. Several cases similar to yours. Innovations credited to executives that were actually developed by staff engineers, mostly women and minorities. I wasn't surprised, but the confirmation still stung. We're fixing it, Jamie assured me. Every innovation will be properly credited from now on. As we parted, I felt a sense of purpose stronger than ever before. This fight hadn't just been about me. It was about changing the system. 1 month after my return, Stratus X issued a press release that made headlines across the tech industry. Stratus X Robotics proudly recognizes Ivy Monroe as the original architect and patent holder of Neuralink, the revolutionary AI control system powering our award-winning robotics line. As our new Chief Technology Officer, Ms. Monroe will lead our innovation efforts and ensure Stratus X remains at the forefront of ethical AI development. The release also announced my appointment to the board of directors and the creation of the Monroe Innovation Fund to support emerging engineers within the company. What the release didn't mention was that Troy had been permanently removed from his position and was facing a separate investigation related to the Neuralink scandal. When the news broke, my inbox filled with congratulatory messages from colleagues across the industry. Many shared similar stories of having their contributions minimized or stolen. Janet called me into her office that afternoon. The response has been overwhelming. 3 major clients who were considering leaving have renewed their contracts, specifically citing your leadership as the reason. I smiled. That's good news. There's more, she added. The Tech Women Conference has requested you as their keynote speaker next month. They want you to talk about innovation, credit, and rebuilding after setbacks. Public speaking had never been my strength, but this felt important. Tell them I'll do it, I said. A week later, Jamie came to my office looking nervous. I found something during the audit you should see. It was an email Troy had sent to several board members 3 months before my termination. As discussed, we need to streamline the old guard and install more forward-thinking talent. Ivy Monroe's position in particular represents significant overhead that could be better allocated to sales and marketing. Her system is now stable enough that we can maintain it with less experienced and less expensive engineers. What shocked me wasn't Troy's plan to fire me. I'd known that was coming. It was the response from Janet that surprised me. I cannot support this action. Ivy's contributions are central to our success, and her system requires her expertise. Review her patent agreement before making any decisions. Troy had ignored her warning completely. There's more, Jamie said, showing me additional emails where Troy had misrepresented the board's support for his decisions. I forwarded everything to Sandra. The SEC should see these, I told her. Troy wasn't just making bad decisions, he was misleading the board and potentially investors. Sandra nodded grimly. This changes things. He could face serious charges. That night, I sat on my balcony reflecting on how quickly everything had changed. 2 months ago, I'd been fired and humiliated. Now I was helping build a case against the man who'd done it. Justice worked in unexpected ways. With the crisis behind us, I focused on lasting change at Stratus X. My first initiative was the Engineer Attribution Protocol. ensuring every contributor was properly credited and compensated. The board unanimously approved it. "This is revolutionary," Dr. Allen said. "Most companies fight to own every idea. We're doing the opposite." "We're acknowledging reality," I responded. "Innovation comes from people, not corporate entities." Each product now included a digital credit roll listing every contributor. The industry noticed. 3 competitors contacted me to learn more. Lena stopped by my office one day. "You know what's different? People are excited to come to work again. They feel valued." That meant more to me than any achievement. We weren't just building better robots. We were building a better company. All because one petty boss underestimated the wrong woman. 6 months into my role as CTO, Troy requested a coffee meeting to clear the air before launching his new venture. Professor Chen advised against it, but curiosity won. I agreed to meet at a public cafe. Troy arrived looking thinner, his swagger replaced by hesitancy. He launched into a rehearsed speech about moving forward and his new autonomous vehicle company. I studied him carefully. "Troy, why are you really here?" He hesitated, then revealed his agenda. "The lawsuit against Neuralink is excessive. I could help smooth things over if you're reasonable." I stood up, leaving my coffee untouched. "I'm not interested. You didn't just fire me. You freed me to build something better than you ever could." Walking away, I felt a weight lift. That chapter was finally closed. 1 year after my termination, I signed papers for my newest venture, Sovereign Systems, specializing in ethical AI frameworks and engineer-protected innovation. StratusX became minority investors, with Janet joining my advisory board. I remained on their board while building my own vision. Lena joined as my co-founder. We hired brilliant people who had been overlooked elsewhere. Our first client, Omni Dynamics, StratusX's biggest competitor. "Aren't you concerned about conflict of interest?" their CEO asked. "Not at all," I replied. "My expertise is building systems where innovation is both protected and properly attributed." "And your contracts?" I smiled. "Let's just say we read them very, very carefully." As we left with their signed agreement, Lena grinned. "1 year ago, you were clearing out your desk. Now you're changing the industry." 18 months after my firing, I stood on stage accepting the Innovation of the Decade Award for Neuralink. My name gleamed on the plaque as creator and patent holder. Innovation happens when talented people receive the freedom, resources, and recognition they deserve, I told the audience. Afterward, a young woman approached me. "Miss Monroe, I'm Zoe. I'm here because of your story. Your keynote speech gave me courage to pursue robotics despite everyone saying it was too competitive." Her words moved me. "What are you working on now?" "I just got accepted to the Monroe Fellowship at StratusX," she said proudly. "Remember," I told her, "build something so good they can't ignore it, and so well protected they can't take it from you." As she walked away, I felt complete. My fight had created ripples that would help the next generation build a fairer industry. That was the best victory of all.